Yascha Kripasindubhye cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So welcome to our reading of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are in the chapter called The Rasa Dance, the introduction. I forget the number on the chapter right now. And we've gotten sort of halfway through, and we're going to finish this chapter. Yeah, if you have the paperback book, it's on page 283 where we picked up. Thinking when all the gopis assembled as described, that's where we're going to start up again with this. Okay, Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripasindhueva Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, here, Krishna book. Where when all the gopis assembled, let's get it up on the big screen here where I can see. When all the gopis assembled, almost.
There we go. We'll catch up. There we go. Okay.
So we're continuing now. When all the gopis assembled as described before Krishna, he began to speak to them, welcoming them as well as discouraging them by word jugglery. Krishna is the supreme speaker. He's the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita. He can speak on the highest elevated subjects of philosophy, politics, economics, everything. And he also spoke before the gopis who were so dear to him. He wanted to enchant them by word jugglery, and thus he began to speak as follows. O ladies of Vrindavan, Krishna said, you are very fortunate, and you are very dear to me. I am very pleased that you have come here, and I hope everything is well in Vrindavan. Now, please order me. What can I do for you? What is the purpose of your coming here in the dead of night? Kindly take your seats and let me know what I can do for you. The gopis had come to Krishna to enjoy his company, to dance with him, embrace him, and kiss him. And when Krishna began to receive them very officially, showing all kinds of etiquette, they were surprised. He was treating them like ordinary society women. Therefore, they began to smile among themselves, and though they very eagerly listened to Krishna talk in that way, they were surprised. Then Krishna began to instruct them. My dear friends, you must know that it is now the dead of night, and the forest is very dangerous. At this time, all the ferocious jungle animals, the tigers, bears, jackals, and wolves, are prowling in the forest. Therefore, it is very dangerous for you. You cannot select a secure place now. Everywhere you go, you will find that all these animals are loitering to find their prey. I think, therefore, that you are taking a great risk in coming here in the dead of night. Please turn back immediately without delay. When he saw that they continued to smile, he said, I very much appreciate your bodily features. All of you have nice, very thin waists. All of the gopis there were exquisitely beautiful. They are described by the word sumadhyama. The standard of beauty of a woman is said to be sumadhyama when the middle portion of the body is slender. I looked this word up in the Sanskrit dictionary. As an adjective, it means slender waisted. The middle part of the body is nice, sumadhyama. So slender waisted, and as a noun, it means a graceful woman. Krishna wanted to impress on them that they were not old enough to take care of themselves. Actually, they required protection. It was not very wise for them to come in the dead of night to Krishna. Krishna also indicated that he was young and that they were young girls. This is in quotation marks, he's speaking. It does not look very well for young girls and boys to remain together in the dead of night. After hearing this advice, the gopis did not seem very happy. Therefore, Krishna began to stress the point in a different way. My dear friends, I can understand that you have left your homes without the permission of your guardians. Therefore, I think your mothers, your fathers, your elder brothers, and even your sons, what to speak of your husbands, must be very anxious to find you. As long as you are here, they must be searching in different places, and their minds must be very agitated. So don't tarry. Please go back and make them peaceful. When the gopis appeared to be a little bit disturbed and angry from hearing the free advice of Krishna, they diverted their attention to looking at the beautiful beauty of the forest. You start looking around. At that time, the whole forest was illuminated by the bright shining of the moon, and the air was blowing very silently over the blooming flowers, and the green leaves of the trees were moving in the breeze. Krishna took the opportunity of their looking at the forest to advise them. He said, I think you have come out to see the beautiful Vrindavan forest on this night. He said, but you must now be satisfied. So return to your homes without delay. I understand that you are all very chaste women. So now that you have seen the beautiful atmosphere of the Vrindavan forest, please return home and engage in the faithful service of your respective husbands. Some of you must have babies by this time, although you are very young. You must have left your small babies at home, and they must be crying. please immediately go back home and just feed them with your breast milk. I can also understand that you have very great affection for me, and out of that transcendental affection, you have come here, hearing my playing on the flute. Your feelings of love and affection for me are very appropriate because I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All living creatures are my parts and parcels, and naturally, they are affectionate to me. So, this affection for me is very welcome, and I congratulate you for this. Now you can go back to your homes. Another thing I must explain to you is that for a chaste woman, service to the husband without duplicity is the best religious principle. Not only should a woman be faithful and chaste to her husband, but she should also be affectionate to the friends of her husband, obedient to the father and mother of her husband, and affectionate to the younger brothers of her husband. And most importantly, a woman must take care of her children. In this way, Krishna explained the duty of a woman. He also stressed the point of serving the husband. He said, even if he is not of a very good character, or even if he is not very rich or fortunate, or even if he is old and invalid on account of continuing diseases, whatever her husband's condition, a woman should not divorce her husband if she actually desires to be elevated to the higher planetary systems after leaving this body. Besides that, it is considered abominable in society if a woman is unfaithful and goes searching for another man. Such habits will deter a woman from being elevated to the heavenly planets, and the results of such habits are very degrading. A married woman should not search for a paramour, for this is not sanctioned by the Vedic principles of life. If you think that you are very much attached to me and you want my association, I advise you not to personally try to enjoy me. It is better for you to go home, simply talk about me and think of me, and by this process of constantly remembering me and chanting my names, you will surely be elevated to the spiritual platform. There's no need to stand near me. Please go back home. The instructions given herein by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the gopis was not at all sarcastic. Such instructions should be taken very seriously by all honest women. The chastity of women is specifically stressed herein by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, this principle should be followed by any serious woman who wants to be elevated to a higher status of life. Krishna is the center of all affection, for all living creatures. When this affection is developed for Krishna, one surpasses and transcends all Vedic injunctions. This was possible for the gopis because they saw Krishna face to face. This is not possible for any woman in the conditioned state. Unfortunately, sometimes a rascal, following the philosophy of monism or oneness, very irresponsibly takes advantage of this Rasa Lila to imitate the behavior of Krishna with the gopis, enticing many innocent women and misleading them in the name of spiritual realization. As a warning, Lord Krishna has herein hinted that what was possible for the gopis is not possible for ordinary women. Although a woman can actually be elevated by advanced Krishna consciousness, she should not be enticed by an impostor who says that he is Krishna. She should concentrate her devotional activities in chanting about Krishna and meditating upon him as is advised herein. One should not follow the men called sahajiyas, the so-called devotees who take everything very lightly. When Krishna spoke in such a discouraging way to the gopis, they became very sad, for they thought that their desire to enjoy the Rasa dance with Krishna would be frustrated. Thus they became full of anxiety. Out of great sadness, the gopis began to breathe very heavily. Instead of looking at Krishna face to face, they bowed their heads, looked at the ground, and they began to draw various types of curved lines on the ground with their toes. They were shedding heavy tears, and their cosmetic decorations were being washed from their faces. The water from their eyes mixed with the kumkuma on their breasts and fell on the ground and fell to the ground. They could not say anything to Krishna, but simply stood there silently. By their silence, they expressed that their hearts were grievously wounded. The gopis were not ordinary women. In essence, they were on an equal level with Krishna. They are his eternal associates. As it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, they are expansions of the pleasure potency of Krishna. And as his potency, they are none different from him. Although they were depressed by the words of Krishna, they did not like to use harsh words against him. Yet they wanted to rebuke Krishna for his unkind words, and therefore they began to speak in faltering voices. They did not like to use harsh words against Krishna because he was their dearmost, their heart and soul. The gopis had only Krishna within their hearts. They were completely surrendered and dedicated souls. Naturally, when they heard such unkind words, they tried to reply, but in the attempt, torrents of tears fell from their eyes. Finally, they managed to speak. Krishna, they said, you are very cruel. You should not talk like that. We are full-fledged, surrendered souls. Please accept us and don't talk in that cruel way. Of course, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and can do whatever you like, but it is not worthy of your position to treat us in such a cruel way. We have come to you, leaving everything behind just to take shelter of your lotus feet. We know that you are completely independent and can do whatever you like, but we request you, don't reject us. We are your devotees. You should accept us as Lord Narayana accepts his devotees. There are many devotees of Lord Narayana who worship him for salvation, and he awards them salvation. Similarly, how can you reject us when we have no shelter other than your lotus feet? Oh dear Krishna, they continued, you are the supreme instructor. There's no doubt about it. Your instructions to women to be faithful to their husbands and merciful to their children, to take care of household affairs, and to be obedient to the elderly members of the family are surely just according to the tenets of the Shastras. But we know that one may perfectly observe all these instructions of the Shastras by keeping oneself under the protection of your lotus feet. Our husbands, friends, family members, and children are all dear and pleasing to us only because of your presence, for you are the super soul of all living creatures. Without your presence, one is worthless. When you leave the body immediately dies. And according to the injunctions of the Shastras, a dead body must be immediately thrown into a river or burned. Therefore, ultimately, you are the dearmost personality in this world. By placing our faith and love in your personality, we are assured of never being bereft of husband, friends, sons, or daughters. If a woman accepts you as the supreme husband, then she will never be bereft of her husband as in the bodily concept of life. If we accept you as our ultimate husband, then there is no question of being separated, divorced, or widowed. You are the eternal husband, eternal son, eternal friend, and eternal master. And one who enters into a relationship with you is eternally happy. Since you are the teacher of all religious principles, your lotus feet have to be worshipped first. Accordingly, the Shastras state, Acharya Upasana, the worship of your lotus feet is the first principle. Besides that, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, you are the only enjoyer, you are the only proprietor, and you are the only friend. As such, we have come to you, leaving aside all so-called friends, society, and love, and now you have become our enjoyer. Let us be everlastingly enjoyed by you. Be our proprietor, for that is your natural claim, and be our supreme friend, for you are naturally so. Let us thus embrace you as the supreme beloved. Then the gopis told lotus-eyed Krishna, please do not discourage our long cherished desires to have you as our husband. Any intelligent man who cares for his own self-interest reposes all his loving spirit in you. Persons who are simply misled by the external energy, who want to be satisfied by false concepts, try to enjoy themselves apart from you. The so-called husband, friend, son, daughter, father, and mother are all simply sources of material misery. No one is made happy in this material world by having a so-called father, mother, husband, son, daughter, and friend. Although the father and mother are expected to protect the children, there are many children who are suffering from want of food and shelter. There are many good physicians, but when a patient dies, no physician can revive him. There are many means of protection, but when one is doomed, none of the protective measures can help. And without your protection, the so-called sources of protection simply become sources of continued distress. We therefore appeal to you, dear Lord of all lords, please do not kill our long cherished desire to have you as our supreme husband. Dear Krishna, as women, we are certainly satisfied when our hearts are engaged in the activities of family affairs. But our hearts have already been stolen by you. We can no longer engage them in family affairs. Besides that, although you have repeatedly asked us to return home, and that is a very appropriate instruction, unfortunately, we have been stunned here. Our legs have no power to move a step from your lotus feet. Therefore, if even at your request we return home, what shall we do there? We have lost all our ability to act without you. Instead of engaging our hearts in family affairs as women, we have now developed a different type of lust, which is continually blazing in our hearts. Now we request you, dear Krishna, to extinguish that fire with your beautiful smile and the transcendental vibration emanating from your lips. If you do not agree to do us this favor, we shall certainly be burned in the fire of separation. In that condition, we shall simply think of you and your beautiful features and give up our bodies immediately. In that way, we think it would be possible for us to reside at your lotus feet in the next life. Dear Krishna, if you say that if we go home, our respective husbands will satisfy the lusty flame of our desire, we can only say that that is no longer possible. You have given us a chance to be enjoyed by you in the forest and have touched our breasts once in the past. Remember when you stole their clothes? And have touched our breast once in the past, which we accepted as a blessing, as do the goddesses of fortune, who are enjoyed in the Vaikuntha Lokas by you. Since we have tasted this transcendental enjoyment, we are no longer interested in going to anyone but you for the satisfaction of our lust. Dear Krishna, the lotus feet of the goddess of fortune are always worshipped by the demigods. Although she is always resting on your chest in the Vaikuntha planets, she underwent great austerity and penance to have some shelter at your lotus feet, which are always covered by tulsi leaves. Your lotus feet are the proper shelter of your servitors, and the goddess of fortune, instead of abiding on your chest, comes down and worships your lotus feet. We have now placed ourselves under the dust of your feet. Please do not reject us, for we are fully surrendered souls. Krishna has a curl of white hair on his chest, which is called Shrivats. That's the mark of where Shri, the goddess of fortune, lives. Dear Krishna, you are known as Hari. You destroy all the miseries of all living entities. Hari means one who takes away. So here they're saying it's the miseries that he takes away. You destroy all the miseries of all living entities, specifically of those who have left their homes and family attachment and have completely taken to you. We have left our homes with the hope that we shall completely devote and dedicate our lives to your service. We are simply begging to be engaged as your servants. We do not wish to ask you to accept us as your wives. Simply accept us as your maidservants. Since you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and like to enjoy the Parakiya Rasa, Parakiya meaning belonging to another, the wives of other men. That's the Parakiya Rasa. Swakiya Rasa is your own mate. This is Parakiya Rasa. Since you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and like to enjoy the Parakiya Rasa and are famous as a transcendental woman hunter, we have come to satisfy your transcendental desires. We are also after our own satisfaction, for simply by looking at your smiling face, we have become very lusty. We have come before you decorated with all ornaments and dresses and dress, but until you embrace us, all our garments and beautiful features remain incomplete. You are the Supreme Person, and if you complete our dressing attempt as the Purusha Bhushana, or the male ornament, then all our desires and bodily decorations are complete. Nice, huh? Purusha Bhushana. Dear Krishna, we have simply been captivated by seeing you with tilak and with earrings, and by seeing your beautiful face covered with scattered hair and bearing your extraordinary smile. Not only that, but we are also attracted by your arms, which always give assurance to the surrendered souls. And although we are also attracted by your chest, which is always embraced by the goddess of fortune, we do not wish to take her position. We shall simply be satisfied by being your maidservants. If you accuse us, however, of encouraging prostitution, then we can only ask, where is the woman within these three worlds who is not captivated by your beauty and the rhythmic songs vibrated by your transcendental flute? Within these three worlds, there is no distinction between men and women in relation to you, because both men and women belong to the marginal potency of Prakriti. No one is actually the enjoyer or male. Everyone is meant to be enjoyed by you. There is no woman within these three worlds who cannot but deviate from her path of chastity once she is attracted to you, because your beauty is so sublime that not only men and women, but also cows, birds, beasts, and even trees, fruits, and flowers, everyone and everything becomes enchanted. And what to speak of ourselves? It is, however, definitely decided that as Lord Vishnu is always protecting the demigods from the onslaught of demons, so you have also advented in Vrindavan just to give the residents protection from all kinds of distress. Oh, dear friend of the distressed, kindly place your hand on our burning breasts as well as on our heads, because we have surrendered to you as your eternal maidservants. If you think, however, that your lotus-like palms might be burned to ashes if placed on our burning breasts, let us assure you that your palm will feel pleasure instead of pain, as the lotus flower, although very delicate and soft, enjoys the scorching heat of the sun. Upon hearing the anxious plea of the gopis, the Supreme Personality of Godhead smiled, and being very kind to the gopis, the Lord also, although self-sufficient, began to embrace them and kiss them as they desired. When Krishna, smiling, looked at the faces of the gopis, The beauty of their faces became 100 times enhanced. When he was enjoying them in their midst, he appeared just like the full moon, surrounded by millions of shining stars. Thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead, surrounded by hundreds of gopis, and decorated with a flower garland of many colors, began to wander within the Vrindavan forest, sometimes singing to himself, and sometimes singing with the gopis. In this way, the Lord and the gopis reached the cool, sandy bank of the Jamuna, where there were lilies and lotus flowers. In such a transcendental atmosphere, the gopis and Krishna began to enjoy one another. While they were walking on the bank of the Jamuna, Krishna would sometimes put his arms around a gopi's head, breast, or waist, pinching one another and joking and looking at one another. They enjoyed. When Krishna touched the bodies of the gopis, their lust to embrace him increased. They all enjoyed these pastimes. Thus the gopis were blessed with all mercy by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for they enjoyed his company without a tinge of mundane sex life. The gopis, however, soon began to feel very proud, thinking themselves to be the most fortunate women in the universe due to being favored by the company of Krishna. Lord Krishna, who is known as Keshava, could immediately understand their pride caused by their great fortune of enjoying him personally, and in order to show them his causeless mercy and to curb their false pride, he immediately disappeared from the scene, exhibiting his opulence of renunciation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always full with 6 kinds of opulences, and this is an instance of the opulence of renunciation. This renunciation confirms Krishna's total non-attachment. He is always self-sufficient and not dependent on anything. This is the platform on which his transcendental pastimes are enacted. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 29th chapter of Krishna, the Rasa dance introduction. So there's more to come.
Thank you very much for that reading. And thank you everybody for joining us this evening or morning or afternoon, whatever time it is in your time zone. And now we'll open it up for any questions or comments, any reflections. If you are on Zoom, you can unmute yourself or push the raised hand button. You're also welcome to type into the comment section any question or comment. And if you want to ask something, that's also a way of doing that. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and type your question or comment into the chat box there. And a special thank you to Jai Dvaita Maharaj for joining us this evening. We're missing you here. And my obeisances to you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Shakti Prabhu, this is Dear Gurudev, please at my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'd just like to thank you so much for tonight's reading.
It was my pleasure.
Nice to have you on here, Gaur Shakti Prabhu.
Thank you.
While we're waiting for some hands to be raised, I have a few things that struck me. One thing was the gopis talking about how their husbands can no longer satisfy their desires. That just reminding me of, as we make progress in Krishna consciousness, we can hopefully get to the point where certain things that were once, attractive to us or something no longer satisfy our desires, and we realize that only devotional service or some relationship with Krishna can do that. And I did have one question about here. Krishna was, or in this chapter, they were talking about how the gopis are the eternal associates of Krishna, but wasn't it also said earlier on how some of the gopis kind of rose to that level of being gopis?
Yeah.
So how did
I think
that's all.
speaking generally, he came when he descends, all of Vrindavan comes down, all of the spiritual world comes down. And so they're all eternal associates, but there are those that are promoted up, and generally we are told by Prabhupada that if one has become a liberated soul and is a pure devotee, before going to the spiritual world, you go to that place where Krishna is enjoying his pastimes. They're shown somewhere, always they're going on in this material world. As soon as they finish in one place, Krishna goes to another planet somewhere, and that people who are become liberated first, they go and participate in that pastime that's shown here in the material world, and then goes back to the spiritual world. In one sense, there's no difference, for any of us. But that's the detailed description of what happens.
Thank you. That makes sense. That clarifies that. Any questions, comments, reflections? And Sankarsana Prabhu says, it seems the desires of the gopis at one point were afflicted by lust and their own interests, as they put it, and later it was stated they enjoyed Krishna's company without a tinge of mundane lust.
Yeah, well, when they say it's their lust, it's the difference between love and lust is that love is the pure desire to satisfy the senses of another. And lust is to use another to satisfy one's own senses. So that's why what they felt, it may feel like in some ways be similar to lust, but it's actually Prabhupada said that a pure devotee has no other way of experiencing happiness except by seeing that Krishna is happy in all respects. And that's what love is. So it may appear and be called there sometimes in this they experience it as lust. Some of the symptoms seem to be quite similar, but they're happy only if Krishna is happy, and pleased only if Krishna is pleased.
Thank you for that. And Kendra Prabhu says, Jai Gurudev, my obeisances, I'm happy to hear you read this.
Thank you. I like reading it.
Well, I have a question.
Go for it, please.
I don't know the answer. Later we'll read that at the time of the Rasa dance, Krishna was only 7 or 8 years old. At that age, a boy can't be lusty. That whole argument is made. But here we find that the gopis are old enough to have children. Some of them, they're feeling burning sensations in their breasts. Later in the rasa, and there's kissing and embracing. That's not really like 7 or 8 year old behavior. So how do we reconcile these two?
There's a glitch in the system here. You seem to have been stopped.
Apparently
Okay.
conflicting. Oh,
Okay, now we got it.
Where-
Okay.
did the question get through, or?
Yeah, I got the I know. The answer is that actually, in terms of Earth years, Krishna's development was accelerated. If you look at the timing and everything, he matured very quickly. And so he was 8 years old in the sense of having been around for that long, but actually he was, everything was sped up. I don't know where that's been explained, but I've heard it several times in several places from authoritative sources that he has somebody figured out the timing, and the idea was that his development was accelerated.
But then that seems to gut the argument that at 8 years old, right?
Yeah. He wasn't 8 years old anymore. He was like a teenager by that time.
Right. So then what do we do with that argument?
What argument?
That at 7 or 8 years old, a boy can't be lusty, etc., etc.
He can if he's Krishna.
Okay. But the argument,
Oops, we lost you again, Maharaj.
Krishna couldn't have been. I mean, I understand.
You're breaking up, Maharaj.
It's breaking up again.
Yes. If you could repeat. Sorry, if you could repeat.
We need better technology, don't we?
With now, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
So, but then what happens to the? I understand on different grounds why there's no lust involved between Krishna and the gopis. How it's like the difference between iron and gold. But what happens to that argument about 7 years old, therefore not lusty? Doesn't seem to. It seems like almost what would you say a expedient sort of argument, or
No, I assume that what his accelerated development was that in one sense time passed very swiftly, and he grew up fast, and therefore he was matured very young, you might say. He didn't have one of those prolonged adolescence, because he never gets older. He gets to a certain age and he stays. He doesn't grow old anywhere along the line. So he's in charge of these kind of things like, he's in charge of time. I'd say somehow or other he manages to do it. He's not under the control of time like we are. He controls time. So so somehow or other, it was done in that way. I forgot who made the calculation about just exactly how is. I think Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur somewhere.
And Charachandra Prabhu adds that it was 1.5 times. So at 8 years old, it means it was really acting as a maturity of a 12-year-old.
Okay, so he was 12. I mean, that's still pretty good for 12 years. But
so does this also mean that the gopis were older than?
I don't know. I simply don't know. But he's in control of everything. He can do all kinds of stuff. So that's all I can say.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Chandra said it's 1.5 times. Okay, so he's got actually got a figure. Okay.
Thank you for that. Brings up a lot of questions actually about it. At what age do things happen?
Well,
It
if Krishna
seems-
says time I am, come on. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Maharaj.
Thank-
And Ninta has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the wonderful reading. I had a question from something that you said earlier in a different class, actually. You once mentioned, I mean, maybe 2 or 3 classes, maybe a Bhagavatam class, you mentioned that if we get absorbed materially, then the transcendental happiness that we experience will be blocked. So when I heard that, it was very inspiring, and it really has been helping me to keep myself on the right track of being absorbed in Krishna consciousness more often than otherwise. But I also feel kind of guilty that Krishna consciousness should be performed for the pleasure of your spiritual superior, Prabhupada's pleasure, Krishna's pleasure. But when I think about it, like I'm going to block my own transcendental happiness, then that's very a selfish motive. But at this stage, is it okay for me to dwell on that?
Well, it's okay to be happy, but actual happiness for a devotee, the spiritual happiness, comes from seeing that Prabhupada says one place that a devotee has no other way of experiencing happiness except by seeing that Krishna is happy in all respect. So whatever that it pleases Krishna, and of course we also know that if you make other devotees happy, Krishna is pleased. So that's also pleasing Krishna. So it doesn't mean that you have, and there's many different things you can do that please Krishna. If you go out and make other people devotees by distributing books or by preaching, that pleases Krishna. So all those things are pleasing Krishna, and you will find out that by pleasing Krishna, you naturally become happy. You don't have to even think about your own happiness because it just sort of automatically occurs. And that satisfaction, that's transcendental satisfaction, doesn't produce any karma. Actually burns off karma. And so is that clear?
Not quite, because I'm talking about like the instances when I'm slipping into material absorption, which is very often. The motivation for me to not slip into it, the motivation for me to choose a spiritual activity is that I'll be more happy if I choose a spiritual activity. So the basic motivation is my own happiness.
Yeah, well, it will start that way, but it will continue because what that spiritual activity does is pleasing Krishna. Doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So if whatever you do pleases Krishna, and as a result of pleasing Krishna, you become happy, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. And you should want to please Krishna more and more. And after a while, you stop forgetting about your own happiness and just please Krishna. Mm-hmm. And, we find it we find it, Lord Chaitanya at the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the last part, in the mood of Radharani, that if something that makes me miserable in this world, something that makes me unhappy, If that makes Krishna happy, then it's the best of my happiness. And so that is also maybe hard for people to understand, but it's selfless desire to make Krishna happy. And if he enjoys my being unhappy, I'm happy being unhappy. So it's a different kind of the spiritual happiness is not just material happiness. It's qualitatively different from material happiness. It's not the same.
Thank you so much, Gurudev.
It's like happiness that you become addicted to it. Has that similarity.
Thank you for that question, Anindita. And I think that wraps it all up for this evening. It's nearly 8 o'clock our time.
Next installment, chapter 30, Krishna's hiding from the gopis. Now they're going to see how they intensifies their love for Krishna.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens, right. Okay. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Krishna book ki jai.